Good evening, cousins. Thank you for coming back. Woo! Yesterday was deep. We talked about the Range Rover that I thought that I was purchasing for freedom, which really ended up being the opposite. We talked about me being stuck in the parking lots. We talked about the suspension of my agency. We talked about the blue couch and the realization that success had stopped feeling like freedom for me. But if I'm being honest, there is a part that I left out, okay, that I want to talk about tonight. And it's the part about the fact that none of these things that I've been sharing with you happened overnight. It was like a pile up of little small things, you know? Looking back now, I noticed how those small things, those hundreds of small things piled up and got heavier and heavier and heavier. But then it just looked like something small. Little things I kept telling myself, I'll fix tomorrow. A process that wasn't quite there yet, a system that I knew needed to be tightened, but it didn't seem like a big deal. A manager that needed more support, documentation that needed more oversight, accountability that needed more structure. And I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate, right? Nothing at that time felt urgent because growth was happening. Like I was actively growing. And growth has a funny way of making you feel safe. My revenue was growing. Referrals was coming in left and right. New clients were constantly enrolling to my agency. So my services were expanding and my team was growing. Everything looked like proof that I was winning. And that's really what I want to talk about tonight. Because after years of reflecting on my own story, I've come to a conclusion that completely changed the way that I think about leadership today. Many providers don't struggle because they lack commitment. Many providers struggle because the very behaviors that help them succeed eventually become the same thing that threaten them against sustainability. Think about it. Think about what takes what 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 you have to do when you first start your agency. You have to be resourceful. You have to be resilient. You have to figure things out. You have to work long hours. Long hours, right? You have to solve all the problems. You have to sacrifice and sacrifice and sacrifice. You have to carry responsibility. You have to stay alert even when you aren't. You have to stay available even when you can't. You have to stay involved even when you aren't there. And in the beginning, those behaviors make perfect sense because you're building something from ground zero up. The organization is small. Your resources at that time are probably limited. So the founder has to do things nobody else can do yet. That makes sense. That's absolutely normal. But the problem is, many leaders never transition out of survival mode. That survival mode that they needed in the beginning, the business grows and you're still in that same survival mode. The staff grows and you're still in survival mode. The services grow while you're in survival mode. The complexity grows while you are in survival mode. But the survival mode leadership style stays the same. Even after all that has grown, you still use that same survival mode leadership. that you had attained during the time that you were growing. And that's what I want to talk about. Tonight, I want you to meet somebody, okay? So, day one, I introduced you to Frantic that looked a lot like yourself, I'm sure. But tonight, I want you to meet Successful. Yeah. Successful isn't worried, okay? Successful is growing. Successful has referral after referral after referral. Successful has revenue. Successful has staff. Successful has a long waiting list, cousin. You hear me? Successful has more opportunity than capacity. And because everything looks good, successful assumes everything must be good. But here's the problem: growth changes the conditions required for implementation. Imagine you have a residential home, right? You have one. And you know every staff member, you know every client in that home, you know every issue, you know every family. Then you add on another location, then another. Then you add on transportation, you add on a day program, and then you add on 50 employees. After your 50, you add on 100. The organization got bigger, but your leadership stayed the same. You're still answering every single question. You're still approving every single decision. You're still solving every single problem. You are still carrying every responsibility. And from the outside, you think like, oh, this is leadership. This is what I'm supposed to do. I'm the CEO. But underneath the surface, dependency is growing because growth doesn't create strength. Growth reveals the strength that already exists. And sometimes growth reveals weaknesses that were already there. Looking back, when I think about my agency, the warning signs were already there. They were everywhere way before I got to that blue couch that I talked about yesterday, okay? The warning signs were everywhere, but success was louder. The referrals were louder. The revenue was louder. The opportunities were louder. The growth was louder. And when success gets loud, risk gets quiet. And that's a dangerous place to be because growth multiplies everything. Every new staff member creates additional communication needs. Every new client creates additional accountability needs. Every new service creates additional oversight needs. Every new location creates additional implementation needs. Hear me, cousin, please. Growth multiplies everything. That's including risk. That's including dependency. That's including implementation challenges. And here's the part that I wish that I understood years ago. The question is not, can your organization grow? The question is, can your culture actually grow with it? Those are two different questions because sustainable organizations don't depend on the owner's presence. They depend on conditions that make implementation possible, whether the owner is there or not. Shared expectations, shared accountability, shared ownership, shared implementation, shared culture. That's the difference between growth and between sustainability. Growth asks, how much more can we add? Sustainability asks, what can we do to maintain consistency? Growth asks, how fast can we move? Sustainability asks, what happens after we arrive? Growth asks, how much bigger can this become? Sustainability asks, can this survive success? At my agency, my clients loved us. Families loved us. Many of my clients had been there since I had opened. Families stayed with us even through the suspension. So demand wasn't the problem. Growth wasn't the problem. I told you guys I was on my way to 3.5 million when the agency closed. Karen wasn't the problem. Sustainability was the problem. Because growth without implementation is captivity. And delayed implementation is the opposite of sustainability. After losing my agency, I actually feel like I became obsessed with one question. What would have happened if I got warned sooner? What would have shown me the risk while everything still looks successful? What would have shown me the difference between growth and sustainability? That's why I decided to create this provider risk assessment. Because revenue does not tell you if you're sustainable. Hear me, please. Staff growth does not mean that you're sustainable. Client growth doesn't mean that you are sustainable. Growth can create this false sense of security. The assessment helps you see what growth cannot. Whether the conditions required for implementation actually exist inside your organization. So I want you to take the assessment. I want you to see where you're strong, see where your agency may be vulnerable. And most importantly, I want you to see what you've built can actually survive success. Because, cousin, I promise you, growth isn't proof that you are safe. Revenue isn't proof that you are safe. Referrals aren't proof that you are safe, and demand is not proof. The real question isn't can my organization grow? The real question is if I keep growing, will what I built survive? And tomorrow night, we're going to answer the question every provider actually wants answered. What does freedom really look like? And when I talk about freedom, I'm not talking about freedom from responsibility. Of course, you're gonna have responsibility at your agency. So I'm not referring to that. I'm not referring to freedom from leadership. I'm talking about freedom from carrying everything alone. You don't have to carry everything alone. So I want you to think about that. Go ahead and take your assessment, cousin. And I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good night.